The Bantu languages, technically the Narrow Bantu languages, constitute a traditional branch of the Niger-Congo languages. There are about 250 Bantu languages by the criterion of mutual intelligibility, though the distinction between language and dialect is often unclear, and Ethnologue counts 535 languages. Bantu languages are spoken largely east and south of present-day Cameroon. That is in the regions commonly known as Central Africa, Southeast Africa, and Southern Africa. Parts of the Bantu area include languages from other language families. The Bantu language with the largest total number of speakers is Swahili. However, the majority of his speakers know it as a second language. According to Ethnologue, there are over 180 million L2 speakers, but only about 45 million native speakers. According to Ethnologue, Shona is the most widely spoken as a first language, with 10.8 million speakers, followed closely by Zulu, with 10.3 million. Ethnologue separates the largely mutually intelligible Kinyarwanda and Kirundi, but, if grouped together, they have 12.4 million speakers. Estimates of number of speakers of most languages vary widely, due both to the lack of accurate statistics in most developing countries and the difficulty in defining exactly where the boundaries of a language lie, particularly in the presence of a dialect continuum. Origin: the Bantu languages descend from a common Proto-Bantu language, which is believed to have been spoken in what is now Cameroon in West Africa. An estimated 2,500 to 3,000 years ago, although other sources put the start of the Bantu expansion closer to 3000 BC, speakers of the Proto-Bantu language began a series of migrations eastward and southward, carrying agriculture with them. This Bantu expansion came to dominate sub-Saharan Africa east of Cameroon, an area where Bantu peoples now constitute nearly the entire population. The technical term Bantu, meaning human beings, or simply people, was first used by Wilhelm Bleek, as this is reflected in many of the languages of this group. A common characteristic of Bantu languages is that they use words such as muntu or muta for human being, or in simplistic terms person, and the plural prefix for human nouns starting with mu in most languages is ba, thus giving Bantu for people. Bleek, and later Karl Meyerhoff, pursued extensive studies comparing the grammatical structures of Bantu languages. Classification. The term Narrow Bantu was coined by the Benue-Congo Working Group to distinguish Bantu as recognized by Malcolm Guthrie in his seminal 1948 classification of the Bantu languages, from the Bantoid languages not recognized as Bantu by Guthrie. In recent times, the distinctiveness of Narrow Bantu as opposed to the other southern Bantoid groups has been called into doubt, but the term is still widely used. A coherent classification of Narrow Bantu will likely need to exclude many of the Zone A and perhaps Zone B languages. There is no true genealogical classification of the Bantu languages. Most attempted classifications are problematic in that they consider only languages which happen to fall within traditional Narrow Bantu, rather than South Bantoid, which has been established as a unit by the comparative method. The most widely used classification, the alphanumeric coding system developed by Guthrie, is mainly geographic. At a broader level, the family is commonly split in two depending on the reflexes of Proto-Bantu tone patterns. Many Bantuists group together parts of Zones A through D as Northwest Bantu or Forest Bantu, and the remainder as Central Bantu or Savannah Bantu. The two groups have been described as having mirror-image tone systems, where Northwest Bantu has a high tone and a cognate, Central Bantu languages generally have a low tone, and vice versa. Northwest Bantu is more divergent internally than Central Bantu, and perhaps less conservative due to contact with non-Bantu Niger-Congo languages. Central Bantu is likely the innovative line cladistically. Northwest Bantu is clearly not a coherent family, but even for Central Bantu the evidence is lexical, with little evidence that it is a historically valid group. The only attempt at a detailed genetic classification to replace the Guthrie system is the 1999 Tervuren proposal of Baston, Coopers, and Mann. However, it relies on lexicostatistics, which, because of its reliance on similarity rather than shared innovations, may predict spurious groups of conservative languages which are not closely related. Meanwhile, Ethnologue has added languages to the Guthrie classification that Guthrie overlooked, while removing Lambam languages, and shifting some languages between groups in an apparent effort at a semi-genetic, or at least semi-aerial, classification. This has been criticized for sowing confusion in one of the few unambiguous ways to distinguish Bantu languages. Nurse and Philipson evaluate many proposals for low-level groups of Bantu languages, but the result is not a complete portrayal of the family. Glottologue has incorporated many of these into the classification. Nonetheless, some version of Zones does appear to be a coherent group. The languages which share Dahl's law may also form a valid group, Northeast Bantu. The info box at right lists these together with various low-level groups that are fairly uncontroversial, though they continue to be revised. The development of a rigorous genealogical classification of many branches of Niger-Congo, not just Bantu, is hampered by insufficient data. Language structure: Guthrie reconstructed both the phonemic inventory and the core vocabulary of Proto-Bantu. The most prominent grammatical characteristic of Bantu languages is the extensive use of affixes. Each noun belongs to a class, and each language may have several numbered classes, somewhat like genders in European languages. The class is indicated by a prefix that is part of the noun, as well as agreement markers on verb and qualificative roots connected with the noun. Plural is indicated by a change of class, with a resulting change of prefix. The verb has a number of prefixes, though in the Western languages these are often treated as independent words. In Swahili, for example, Mtoto mdogo amekisoma means the small child has read it, a book. Mtoto child governs the adjective prefix m and the verb subject prefix a. Then comes perfect tense me and an object marker ki agreeing with implicit kitabu book. Pluralizing to children gives watoto wadago wamekisoma, and pluralizing to books gives watoto wadago wamavasoma. Bantu words are typically made up of open syllables of the type CV, with most languages having syllables exclusively of this type. The Bushong language recorded by Vansina, however, has final consonants, while slurring of the final syllable is reported as common among the Tonga of Malawi. The morphological shape of Bantu words is typically CV, VCV, CVCV, VCVCV, etc. That is, any combination of CV. In other words, a strong claim for this language family is that almost all words end in a vowel, precisely because closed syllables are not permissible in most of the documented languages, as far as is understood. This tendency to avoid consonant clusters in some positions is important when words are imported from English or other non-Bantu languages. An example from Chua, the word school, borrowed from English, and then transformed to fit the sound patterns of this language, is skulu. That is, sk has been broken up by inserting an epenthetic u. U has also been added at the end of the word. Another example is buladi for bread. Similar effects are seen in loan words for other non-African CV languages like Japanese. However, a clustering of sounds at the beginning of a syllable can be readily observed in such languages as Shona, and the Makua variants. Reduplication is a common morphological phenomenon in Bantu languages and is usually used to indicate frequency or intensity of the action signaled by the verb stem. Example: in Swahili piga means strike, pigapiga means strike repeatedly. Well-known words and names that have reduplication include Bafana Bafana, a football team, Chipolopolo, a football team, Eric Jemba Jemba, a footballer, Lamana Lulua, a footballer, Ngorongoro, a conservation area. Repetition emphasizes the repeated word in the context that it is used. For instance, Mwenda Pol Hajake, while Pol Pol Ndiamwendo, has to emphasize the consistency of slowness of the pace. The meaning of the former in translation is, he who goes slowly doesn't trip, and that of the latter is, a slow but steady pace wins the race. Haraka would mean hurrying just for the sake of hurrying, reckless hurry, as in njoo. Haraka, come here. Hurry. On the contrary to the above definition, there are some words in some of the languages in which reduplication has the opposite meaning. It usually denotes short durations, and/or lower intensity of the action, and also means a few repetitions or a little bit more. Example 1, in Xitsonga and related, famba means to walk while famba means to walk around. Example 2, in Isi Zulu and Siswati hamba means go, hamba means go meaning go a little bit, but not much. Example 3, in both of the above languages shaya means strike, shayasa means strike, meaning strike a few more times lightly, but not heavy strikes and not too many times. Example 4, in Xitsonga, hasa means chaos. Hasa does not have a meaning. Noun class equals, here is an ongoing list of nominal classes in Bantu. Notable Bantu languages, following are the principal Bantu languages of each country. Included are those languages that constitute at least 1% of the population and have at least 10% the number of speakers of the largest Bantu language in the country. Most languages are best known in English without the class prefix, but are sometimes seen with the prefix. In a few cases prefixes are used to distinguish languages with the same root in their name, such as Chiluba and Kiluba, Umbundu and Kimbundu. The bare form typically does not occur in the language itself, but is the basis for other words based on the ethnicity. So, in the country of Botswana the people are the Batswana, one person is a Motswana, and the language is Setswana. And in Uganda, centered on the Kingdom of Buganda, the dominant ethnicity are the Buganda, whose language is Luganda. This list is incomplete. An attempt at a full list of Bantu languages was found in the Bantu Languages of Africa, 1959. Geographic areas. Bantu words popularized in Western cultures. Some words from various Bantu languages have been borrowed into Western languages. These include, bomba, bongos, bwana, kandum, chimpanzee, conga, goobas, gumbo, hakuna matata, impala, indaba, jenga, jumbo, kalimba, kwanza, mumba, mumbo, myra, marimba, rumba, safari, samba, Simba, Ubuntu. A case has been made out for borrowings of many place names and even misremembered rhymes chiefly from one of the Luba varieties in the USA. Writing systems, along with the Latin script and Arabic script orthographies, there are also some modern indigenous writing systems used for Bantu languages. The Mwango alphabet is in a Bugida that is used to write the Chua language and other languages of Malawi. The Mandum script is in a Bugida that is used to write the Bantu languages of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, mainly by the Kambanguist movement. Isibik Solamvu is a featural syllabary that is used to write Southern Bantu languages. See also, Bantu peoples, Milusans rule, Nguni languages, noun class. References. Bibliography, Biddulph, Joseph, Bantu Byways Pontypridd 2001. ISBN 978-1-897999-30-1. Fink, Franz Nikolaus. Die Bewandtschaftsverhörenzielt nicht der Bantu-Sprachen. Vandenhoek Retrieved August 25, 2012. Guthrie, Malcolm 1948. The Classification of the Bantu Languages. London, Oxford University Press for the International African Institute. Guthrie, Malcolm 1971. Comparative Bantu, Vol. 2. Farnborough, Greg International. Heine, Bund. 1973. Zergentische Gliederung der Bantu-Sprachen. Africa und Anbassi, 56, 164 185. Maho, Jouni F. 2001. The Bantu Area, a Mess. Africa and Asia, 140 49. Maho, Jouni F. 2002. Bantu Lineup, Comparative Overview of 3 Bantu Classifications. Gar Paragraph Taborg University, Department of Oriental and African Languages. Nurse, Derek, and Gar Copyright Rod Phillipson 2006. The Bantu Languages. Routledge. Piron, Pascal 1995. Identification Lexicostatistique des groupes Bento des Stables. Journal of West African Languages, 25, 2, 3:39. Stanford. Kiswahili. Retrieved June 20, 2013. External links. Comparative Bantu Online Dictionary. Includes a comprehensive bibliography. Maho 2009. Guthrie 1948 in detail, with subsequent corrections and corresponding ISO codes. Bantu Online Resources by Jackie Maniaki, including List of Bantu noun classes with reconstructed Proto-Bantu prefixes. Ehret's compilation of classifications by Kleeman, Baston, himself, and others. Contini Marava, Ellen. Noun classification in Swahili 1994. List of Bantu language names with synonyms ordered by Guthrie number. Introduction to the Languages of South Africa, Journal of West African Languages, Narrow Bantu, Bantu Languages of Uganda.